Hey, this is Cole Cabana, and you are listening to the Angry Marks podcast. You are an Angry Mark, and you are listening to a podcast.
Special guest joining us on the line tonight. He is the co-host of the Wrestling Weekly with Doc Young and Will Strauss on Figure 4 Weekly, and before that, the Wrestling Weekly website with Doc Young. He's been a veteran of the wrestling industry for many years, and we're honored to have him on tonight, the legendary Les Thatcher.
Guys, should I have worn black? They got so close, so I mean, I know there's no cigar for that, but hey, there were only two teams get to the finals. That's one way to look at it, you know.
That's true. It's very much like professional wrestling. Only two guys get to main event the card, so you know we can be happy for our truth, even if we think that maybe it's not going anywhere after Sunday. At least he gets there for now and the time being.
Okay, there's a comparison I hadn't thought about.
Well, I mean, you know, it's like you get your hopes high for a guy when they start pushing him up the card, and you think they're actually going to do something with him, but then as you know, the sad state of reality is that they'll, especially in WWE of late, they'll push a guy for a month, and then it seems like they just forget everything about him, and then don't even try anymore. And it's frustrating as a wrestling fan, and I know as a longtime veteran, it's got to be frustrating to you to see them try and then just give up for no reason.
Well, you know, I think it seems to be a topic of conversation in a lot of areas. You know, that same deal. And, you know, I think the problem is nobody thinks long term. And, you know, you hear people talking about, well, you know, they finished writing this show 15 minutes before they went to air and so forth. And, you know, and I don't think last minute changes are new to the industry either, you know, having produced television myself. But what is, I think, part of the problem is when you beat somebody down, you know, perception is reality. That particular phrase, when I was with WWE, I heard over and over and over and over. And, of course, you know, there's a lot of truth to that. And part of the, and no pun intended when I said a lot of truth to that, it's not about our truth. But it's, you know, there's so many guys on that roster that probably have potential. Ron Killings being one, but how was he used a month ago? How was he used 3 months ago? You know, and therein lies the problem. You know, back with the territories, when you thought you were going to give somebody a push, you kind of nurtured them on the lower part of the card. You didn't, you know, they might wrestle to a draw, they might win on a DQ or lose on a DQ, whatever the case may be, but they probably weren't just going to get beat over and over again. And then at some point someone decided, well, next week we're going to make this guy our top heel or our top babyface. So I think that's the problem with the industry across the board, not necessarily just WWE, but, you know, Impact or TNA or whatever they're calling themselves this, you know, today is anyway. But I just think, you know, that there's part of the problem. How does a fan, the casual fan, perceive this guy? And of course, you know, I think the buildup over the last few weeks has been hit and miss too. You know, I didn't like the Confederate Army uniform. I thought if you're trying to make this guy a badass, then you don't want to make him into a clown. You know, I don't think you can have it both ways. You can't have Gomer Pyle be Superman. You can't have Superman be Gomer Pyle.
Right. And they didn't even get the costume right. I heard you mention on Wrestling Weekly that they sent him out there wearing a Confederate uniform and a Union hat, so they didn't even get the details right.
Yeah. Well, or you know, was that a subtle, you know, comedic bit too? I don't know. You know, but I just thought the whole uniform was bad. You know, the week before I wasn't crazy about, you know, the drink being thrown on the plant or the fan and the sun and everything. But I thought if you were going to use it, you know, okay, then the idea is not to make him have to apologize anyway. If you were listening to me talk about it, that was one of the things I said too. You know, I thought back over the years and some of the top heels that I've worked with, they said, well, you've got to get this match, you have to apologize. And of course, that takes a bit of the steam off too. Although they did handle that, I think, kind of gracefully, you know, where he said, well, I'll apologize to get the match, but I don't want anything, you know. But I just wouldn't have had him do that at all, honestly. And beating up on Hornswoggle, I don't think was, you know, it's like beating up on announcers. Like, okay, so you're a badass. You beat up on somebody that's half your size or twice your age. It's been done too, you know. So I don't know. I hope that they've got to build somebody. The roster's, I think, soft. And due to the most fact, it was like we were, you know, like I mentioned earlier, but also a lot of these guys don't have enough experience to go out there and formulate a match and make it strong. And there's not a lot of veterans who can actually go out there and elevate somebody else. I think that's where Christian comes in to being very important to the company right at this point in time, because he is one of the few guys on that roster currently that can take somebody out there that lacks in experience and elevate them and make them look like a better performer than they actually are.
I agree completely. In fact, I don't have a problem at all with Christian being in the role he is on SmackDown right now. It's just that it seems like they were so quick to do it, and it was so contrived how they set it up. It's like you said earlier, there's just no time for things to naturally build up to a point where you're ready to see a guy turn one way or the other. They just have to rapid fire everything just to get guys up to the top for a program that you know is only going to last a month until they go to the next pay-per-view. Yeah,
well, every you know, it seems to be everybody's in a hurry, and I understand to a certain degree that, you know, of course, that I've heard this conversation 9,000 times over the last few years. Well, you know, if you don't do a lot of stuff, then somebody's got their hand on the remote control and they're going to change channels, and I don't think that's the case either so much. I think it's if you give them something they can invest in emotionally, and then they're not going to change anything. I mean, you know, aside from wrestling, I do watch other programming. There's, you know, several. My wife and I have been big Law and Order fans for years, and you know, shows like that. I don't know if you guys have ever caught Justified on the FX channel or not, and which is a great show. It's about a U.S. Marshal based in Kentucky and in and around Harlan, Hazard area. Of course, I guess what drew me to it initially is, you know, by having wrestled in that area and then living not that far, just a couple 100 miles from that area as well. But anyway, they show the vulnerability of the babyface of the lead actor, who's the United States Marshal, but they put him over strong when they need to. But the point is that you're always looking forward to the next episode the following week. I made a reference to this. I told somebody here a few weeks ago when they finished the season out, I said I DVR'd the final episode, and I kept putting off watching it because I realized after I'd watched it, I had to wait till next fall to see more of it. That's how, you know, entertaining I thought it was. And they don't rush through things. They take the time to tell you a story. And I think that's, you know, what's lacking in our industry, too, you know, is taking the time. When I teach wrestling, I always tell guys, you know, what you do in that ring is like reading a book. If you just thumb through the pages quickly, which is what I see with a lot of the spot fest, you know, high spot, high spot, high spot, high spot. Okay, fine. You know, you see something, but there's no meat to it. There's no substance to it. If you turn the pages of a book and read each and every word and digest the story, then you become more engrossed in it and more a part of it. If you're going to if the author is a good author, and I think there's where we're lacking. You know, as everybody's going out, okay, we got to get out there and get as many spots in as we can. You've got 4 minutes, 3 minutes. You know, it's hard to tell a story in a short period of time. And I think with 2 hours, instead of doing the little comedy skits to cover the lack of somebody's talent, I think it's better to go out there and give the guys who can go 10 minutes, you know, and let them have a match and build put some substance to your baby faces and your heels.